Hi, good morning, all of you. And I would like to welcome you all towards this exam prep session of PL200. That is your Power Platform Functional Consultant Associate. In this session, we're going to discuss about some topics which needs to be covered before going towards the examination of PL200. So we're going to have a look that what are going to be the important topics against which we need to study as per our lab guide, as per our student guides, and also to do some R&D on our own. And also we're going to have a look at what kind of questions are going to be come up in the examinations and how the examination process is going to be completed. So let's get started here. Okay, so as like this exam prep session, like PL200, we're also having some additional exam prep sessions are hosted on our GTech websites. So if you guys wanted to register for some additional courses apart from the PL200, like MB series course, like for MB 230, 240, MB 220, AZ 500, AZ 700, SC 200, SC 300. So these ones are going to be available on to our websites. You guys can go there to the websites using the below link. That is our GTechLearn slash gtechlearn.com/webinar.aspx. Over to this website, you will find all the webinars related details and you can register themselves for free. And also after registering those webinars, you can get the recordings also, and also you can get the slide decks, which will going to mostly helpful for you guys to prepare for the examinations here. You can also utilize this QR code. You can scan it via your mobile and the page is going to be opened directly. Then after, if we'll discuss about the certification journey, that how the certification needs to be completed, what are the prerequisites we need to have a look before going towards this PL200 examinations in here. So in this journey, if we'll discuss, so the prerequisite is that whenever we are planning to go for the examination of this PL200, we should have some basic knowledge and some strict knowledge about some technologies here. That the very first technology is related to the Dynamics 365 fundamental CRM, in which we do have some information about how the CRM applications are running, how are we navigating ourselves over there, how the entities are working, how the business process flows are working, and so on. So we do have to have some basic knowledge about that. Also, the another prerequisite for attending this examinations is we do need to have some examination, the basic information to be available about the ERP systems and also how the processes are running over there, as well as how the interface is going to be look like. Apart from them, we do also want to have some basic knowledge related to the Power Platform fundamentals in here, that what is Power Platform, what are the services are included in this, and what is the benefit of using which kind of services. So these are some prerequisites which we need to have it before going towards the PL200 examination. And for getting those knowledge, what are the things we can utilize and what kind of resources we can use in here. So for getting that kind of knowledge, we can actually go for the Microsoft training programs, where the Microsoft is providing us some self-study online courses onto the Docs MCP portal itself. So you can go to the Docs portal, and over to the Docs portal, free study content is going to be available. You guys can open that content, read out those contents, and also in those contents, there are some basic questions are also going to be available, so that you can also test your knowledge, that how much you have actually learned from that study guide. And inside the study guide, you guys also find out some labs overview itself, that how the process needs to be configured in your real-time environment. So each and everything is going to be present in the self-study based online courses. Otherwise, you can also go ahead and attain some Microsoft oriented trainings itself, where instructor-led training is going to be provided to you guys. And the course duration for the PL200 is going to be for the 4 days. In each and every 4 days, 8 hours is going to be a training date. So you can also attain that specific training from the Microsoft orientations. Apart from them, once we'll attain that training, if we are doing it via self-study online or via instructor led, so what kind of experiences what we are going to have it? So we're going to have the experiences of model driven apps, that how can we create some model driven apps, how can we create some canvas app, how can we create some portal apps, what are the different applications are currently here for understanding how we need to use them, on what situations which application needs to use them, what are the components of those situations, and how can we start managing them, how can we actually share these applications with the respective persons who actually needs to use them. Also, you guys will going to have some hands-on experiences while creating the some Power Automate flows, where you guys will going to have some understanding about how to create the flows, how to execute the flows, how many ways do we have to create it, what are the triggers over there, what are the actions, what are the other components of the Power Platform, what kind of specific connectors are available, how can we utilize those connectors, and lots of other things. Also, after completing the training, you guys will going to have some understanding about designing some chatbots using the Power Virtual Agents environment. In the Power Virtual Agents will show you as well that how the chatbot can be created within a second only. We do not have to write down any of the codes and so on. Also, after completing the course, you guys will going to have the understanding about analyzing the data using Power BI tools, as well as some dashboards creations, charts creations, visualizations creations, also a lots of other types of analytics things in here, whether it's for my historical data or it's for my real-time environment data. So these are the experiences which you guys are going to have it after completing the training, whether it's from self-placed or whether it's from the Microsoft itself. What are the self-study resources are available onto this self-placed training? So over there, you guys will going to have some hands-on labs available, but these ones are going to be available only that situations once you guys are opting for self-placed course from the GTechLearn itself. So GTechLearn will going to give you a hands-on lab itself, a kind of a virtual machine where you can perform your practical scenarios also. So you can come us to our websites and you can register for those self-placed course, and the first 15 days is going to be totally free for you guys. So you can attain all types of courses in here. In this one, we're going to have a package. Under the package, you will find the courses for the multiple course codes. Like the if you're opting for the Power Platform package, so you will get the course for PL 200, PL 100, 900, 600, 400, 300, and so on. And also you will get the lab to be associated with them for the first 15 days on a very free note. Then after, we can also utilize some Microsoft Docs here for the study guide as well. You can read out the contents informations, you can read out why these contents are being used, what are the benefits of using it, and lots of other things. You can also go and opt for Microsoft official practice set. So it will going to give you a kind of an environment where you can have a look that what kind of environment is going to be open whenever we are going for the global examination. So it will going to create you a whole environment, and it's going to show you what are the steps are going to be and how the screen will going to be look like and how you need to attain that specific answers and so on. You can also go and have a look about some focus placed exam prep sessions, just like you're attending it here right now. Once we have completed the course related to the PL200, then after we can go for attending some exam prep sessions. And after completing it, we can some learn the things, whatever the topics we have discussed in the exam prep sessions that are more important in the examinations to get the questions. Then after we can actually achieve that specific certification here, we can go for the examinations, complete the examinations. And once we completed the examinations and we passed out that examination, we will get that certification to be available onto our account. So this is a basic journey that from starting to end, how the journey needs to be completed. After that, if we talk about the specific important areas where we are actually going to have those things to be available, like on what area, how much of questions can be expected in the class. So in that situations, we can get the first important area known as configuring the Microsoft Dataverse. And this specific areas we are only discussing for the PL200 exam, not more than that. So in this here, you can see if we are working with the Dataverse, so from the Dataverse environment, we can expect up to 25% of questions in the exam itself. Then after, the second important area we are having in this course is creating the application using the Microsoft Power Apps portal. So from that area, we can expect approximately of 20% of questions over there. Then after, if we'll talk about, so we have another area talking about creating and managing some Power Automate portals. So how can we create the flows using the Power Automate portals? How can we manage them, share with the internal persons? How can we execute them? So from that area, we can expect up to 20% of questions in the exam. Then after, the next area we are having is Power Virtual Agents. So we can also get the 15% of questions in the examinations. We can expect that much of questions from that area where we are discussing about what is Power Virtual Agent, how can we start working with it, what is the benefit of implementing it, what are the different components of them, and how can we start managing it, how can we actually add that bot into the omnichannels related scenarios, and lots of other things. Then after, we're going to have another area that is very important. So it's related to your Microsoft Power Apps with other applications and services, like using the Power Platform, using the Power Apps. What are the other services we can opt in here, we can integrate in here for better results, for better services in the organization? So you can get that in a specific area to be discussed, and from that area we can get approximately of 15% questions in the examination. So this is the expected scenario. Then after, we'll having the last area to be discussed, that is related to your solutions thing. So whenever we are discussing about the solution, so it is very important part of my Microsoft Power Platform itself, and from that area we can expect approximately of 20% questions over there. So that is our important areas which we need to understand before going towards the exam itself. Then after, if we'll talk about what is going to be the exam patterns, how much of time we're going to have it, how much of questions we need to attend, and how the questions are going to be look like, what is the passing mark of that. So everything is written in the slide in here. So we can understand that you will get approximately of 150 minutes to complete your examinations. Out of this 150 minutes, 30 minutes is going to be given to you for your environment setup, for your survey things, as well as your starting questions to be answered, whatever the personal questions are going to be asked about your experiences and your knowledge. So 30 minutes is going to be available for the environment thing, and other than that, the 120 minutes are going to be available for the actual paper in the exam. And in that actual paper, you will get 40 to 50 questions to be answered. That is going to be the maximum period. Out of these 40 to 50 questions, you guys are going to have 2 to 3 study guide, or we can say it as a exam study, accordingly which you need to answer some questions. So they are going to have their specific case studies. You just need to read out those case studies, and based on that case study, for each and every ones, the Microsoft will going to ask you approximately 4 to 5 questions based on that same exam study. So for each ones, how many case studies we got, for each one you will get the 4 to 5 questions to be answered accordingly. Apart from those case study portion, you will get another portion that is present, which will going to known as providing the solution, where the Microsoft is going to ask you some questions and they will going to answer it, that depending upon a situation, this is the solution. Whether this solution is going to be compatible for the situations which we have written in the question or not. So you need to select yes or no over there, whether the solution is going with the question or not. And accordingly, for that area, you will get approximately 4 to 5 questions, and for each and every questions, you will get 2 or 3 different answers. But in this sections, we cannot go back after answering any one of them. So let's suppose that we got the first question and accordingly Microsoft has suggested a solution and we have said that this solution is okay and it's going to be applicable. So I'm selecting that answer as yes, and I'm going to next step to the next question. Maybe after selecting the next, I realized that the previous answer which I have selected is the wrong one. We can't go with the previous solutions which has been provided over there. So we can't go back and change it. It's going to be a lock area. So we always need to understand whenever we are answering in this area, we need to answer it after reading each and everything and also the correct answers. So this is going to be a part of your questions. Apart from them, these two parts will going to have another parts that will going to known as the multiple choice questions. So in the multiple choice questions, you guys are going to have approximately 30 to 28 to 30 questions overall. And out of those 28 to 30 questions, multiple sections of questions are going to be present. Like sometimes you will find the matching questions where the solution is going to be written as well as the tool is going to be written, which will applicable for completing that solution. So you guys need to actually go ahead and answer that thing accordingly or match the things. So sometimes you will get the match questions. Sometimes the Microsoft will going to ask you a question where he will also going to provide the solution, but he will going to ask you about the steps to reach out that solution. So they will going to give you the steps and you need to arrange them in a correct order. So that is also a one type of questions can be expected in the exam. Apart from them, we can get the questions which will going to have multiple answers to be available. So in each and every question, there is a bracket is going to be present at the end and you can select how many answers we need to take from the given ones. So you can decide whether I need to, it will going to give you a thing in a question. You can read out the questions and select that whether you need to select the two answers or only the single answers. So that kind of questions are going to be present and that is how the exam is going to be look like. You will need approximately of 700 score out of 1000. The overall score of that exam is going to be 1000 and you need to achieve approximately of 700. If you are achieving the 699, that means you are fail. And if you are failing, we know that the price will not going to be get back to our account. So every time whenever we are preparing, we will understand the thing that we need to score more than 700 in each and every examinations of the Microsoft. And also you need to answer each and every questions over there. So this is the exam format we are going to have in the real time. Also, you will get some sort of questions like this way. On the top of the questions, you will find this options here that right now you are answering the question 8 from this sections. And in this sections, you need to answer overall 9 questions. So for each and every sections, whether it's for your case study, whether it's for your true or false thing, or whether it's for your multiple sections, the total number of questions is going to be written and on what questions you are currently, it's also going to be written here. And then you can also get the timer on the right hand side top that how much time is still left in the examination portion. So that is your thing which is going to be represented in the window. Now, before starting this exam prep session, let's just have a quick introductions here. So I'm going to introduce myself. So my name is Shivam Shukla. I'm currently working with the GTechLearn Private Limited as a solution architect from past 3 years. Initially, I have 10 plus years of experience in this IT industry, and I have started my career as a business analyst working with the Excel technologies in one of the Indian-based company. But slowly and gradually, I have upgraded myself with the multiple technologies of the Microsoft, and now here I am. So I'm currently working as a solution architect, and I'm also dealing with training industries because I'm a Microsoft certified trainer as well. So 60% of my time goes for the training areas, and apart from them, the 40% time of my self goes for the providing the solutions with my existing customers, what we are having in the GTechLearn, also to some outsource companies itself. Talking about my certifications, so I'm having approximately 15 plus certifications in the different domains of the Microsoft. Like I'm having the certifications, approximately 8 plus certifications in the security domain. I'm having 5 plus certifications on the infrastructure side. I'm having 6 plus certifications in the Power Platform. I'm having 4 plus certifications in the Dynamics areas and so on. So these are some of my certifications, and we are going to talk about the PL200 in this current exam prep session. So that is a brief introduction about myself, that who I am and what I'm doing and how many certifications do I have and the other things. Now let's go ahead and start this session officially. Before starting this session, let me tell you guys one more thing, that between the sessions, if any one of you have any kind of questions to be asked, you guys can go ahead and write it down your questions over to the chat. We're going to attend all of them, how much of time we are available accordingly. And also I would like to ask you guys that you can open up your mic and ask your questions. There's no need to be on shy in this exam prep sessions, because it will going to help you for your exam clearance itself. So let's start with this here. So we're going to discuss some basic topics. What are the important parts in the PL200 examinations? What are the exam common terms are present? And what do we mean by which kind of terms? And how can we start working with them and the other things? So let's start with the very first topic in this exam. So we're going to discuss about the first area of this examinations, talking about configuring the Microsoft Dataverse environment. So in this topic, we're going to have 4 different things to be discussed. The first thing is talking about managing the data model in the Dataverse area. The second thing we're going to discuss about creating and managing logics. The third thing we'll discuss about is configuring the Dataverse in the Power Platform area, and also to configure some security settings. So let's get started with the first thing, talking about the data models in here. But before discussing about that, let's understand what is a Microsoft Dataverse. So what is a Microsoft Dataverse? So Microsoft Dataverse is going to be a centralized solution to store any kind of data of your Office 365 as well as your Power Platform on a centralized location, so that you can access it from the different places via configuring a connectors for third-party services, or maybe the direct connections with your Microsoft services itself. So it is previously we are calling the Microsoft Dataverse as a CDS solutions, that is my common data solutions, but now they have rebranded it, so we know it as a Microsoft Dataverse in here. It will going to help me to store the data of my Power BI area, as well as my Power Apps, as well as my Power Automate and Power Virtual Agents. So whatever the work we are doing, whatever the things I'm creating or I'm generating, each and every things are going to be stored in the Dataverse environment. The benefits of using the Dataverse is it is very easy to manage. We can easily manage it via UI sections, like the user interface sections on a graphical mode. We do not have to write down any kind of queries to manage it and so on. It will going to give me a rich metadata also, which will help us to understand from where the data is coming, what is the use case of that data, and how that data is going to be useful for us, and lots of other things. It will also help us to apply some logics and validations, like about field logic validations, like whether the value is presented inside the field or not, and if we have a field value inside the field, so accordingly we need to have the value on another field also on the same table. So these kind of validations we can set it up very easily in this Dataverse environment. Also, it is easy to secure because we do not have to worry about the security of the Dataverse. The security is fully going to be taken care by the Microsoft itself. They are going to manage the securities. We just need to create some security rules for the accessibility scenarios. Like if we wanted to share the accessibility of my Dataverse environment with my internal users, so we need to prepare the security rules accordingly, and we need to assign those security rules to them so that they can easily get the data from the Dataverse. Apart from them, whatever the outer security is going to be, everything is going to be managed by the Microsoft. So it's a fully managed services. Also, It will going to give us a lots of productivity tools as well that can be helpful for us for creating the apps and the other things. Talking about some basic overview of the Power Platform. So what is a Power Platform? Power Platform is a combinations of 4 different services of the Microsoft. Simple is in a single line of language. Talking about what 4 services are combined in the Power Platform. So these are ones, the Power BI that will be utilized for the business analytics scenario. Whenever we wanted to analyze any kind of data, whether it's my historical, whether it's my real-time sections, we can start using the Power BI for that. The second app which is included in this package is Power Apps. So the Power Apps will going to help me to create the different kinds of applications, whether I'm creating the application for my mobile, whether I'm creating it for my data management, whether I'm creating a websites in it. So each and everything can be created using Power Apps. And the benefit of using the Power App is we do not have to write down the codes every time. So it's going to provide us an environment that will be helpful with low code or no code area. So most probably we do not have to write down any kind of codes over there. Each and everything is already created. We just need to put up our data and start working it. And it will also help to those persons who are working with the environment who do not have the capability to afford the developers. So they can easily create the applications on their own without the need of the developer also. This is the thing for the Power Apps. The third tool we are having inside this package is Power Automate. So the Power Automate is a tool which will help us to create some sort of automated flow. And which kind of flow we can create? So we can create the cloud-based flow that will going to be run online with my multiple services with interconnected, whether it's my Dynamics, it's Power Apps, it should be Power BI, it should be my Excel, Word, or SharePoint or Outlook, OneDrive, any kind of services. We can connect all of them together and we can create a flow that will going to perform some task into the multiple places at the same time. Also, apart from the cloud flow, we can create some sort of business process flow, which will going to help us to understand about the process, how the things are working in my current environment. So we can create a flow accordingly and we can apply that flow towards my environment. And then if a new user is going to be hired, so they will understand how we need to work against a kind of a process based on that business process flow. So we do not have to train them each and every time whenever we are making any changes. We just need to train them once, and then whenever the changes will going to be updated, they know they need to follow the business process flow only, and accordingly the work is going to be completed in a same way every time. And it will also help us to get some better data availability in my environment. Also, apart from that thing, we can create some robotic process automations using the Power Automate. In that RPS actions, we can create some desktop flows itself that will going to help me to initialize some sort of desktop's task to be automated. Like, let's suppose I'll say I need to put up some data from one of my Excel file towards one of my online portal. So I'm doing it via on a manual note by copying the things from my Excel file and then pasting the values into my that environment called whatever the portal I'm having. But if we wanted to make that thing happen using the automation, so we can actually create the desktop flow for it, and based on that the thing is going to be done by an automation way, and we do not require any of the physical person to do the copy paste thing and other things in there. So this is a basic example of desktop process automation. Other than that, we can also achieve a lots of thing in there. Talking about the next tool which is available in that package. So the next tool is Power Virtual Agent, which will help us to create some sort of chatbots in there. And we can utilize those chatbot in any of the manners, whether it's for my internal projects, I wanted to share the information with my multiple users, or it should be my first line of we can say the communications with my external customer. So in both ways, we can actually utilize it. Moving forward to that, it's also an important thing that we do know how to create the tables in the Dataverse, how to modify those tables in the Dataverse, because we will going to get some questions based on that also. Maybe sometimes we will get the questions that if we need to store our data of the customer's financial record, so in that financial records, what kind of columns we do need to have in the tables, and which kind of table it is going to be created, whether it's going to be a standard table to be created, it's going to be activity table to be created, or maybe the other ones. So we do need to know about those things in here. So whenever we are talking about creating or modifying the tables, so we can easily create it using the new table button in my Dataverse environment over to my Power Platform. So in the tables, we'll have the full informations, what are the pre-created tables I'm having and how can we create them. If you wanted to edit the table, so you need to just select the respective table, whatever I'm having, and you can go for the right-hand pop-up button where we can actually edit the tables. Talking about how to use the standard table and to create a new one. So in the Dataverse, whenever we are opting for the Power Platform plan as well as for Dataverse plan, and we do wanted to create some common tables over there. So there are some standard tables are always going to be present that will help us to support our core business applications. And those tables are going to be known as the account table, the contact entity, appointments, address, leads, or maybe the marketing thing, marketing email templates, and the other things itself. So there are going to be a lots of tables, which is going to be present in my Dataverse accordingly, whatever the apps I'm opting. So you can actually utilize them without creating your own. So you do not need to create a kind of a custom table on your side. But if you wanted to make a custom table, like you wanted to have a fully different table to store a kind of a different sets of data according to your business requirement, so you can create the custom tables also. But most probably in the organizations, how far I can see, that most of the time we will always going to use those standard tables which are already created presents in my Dataverse environment. However, we do need to make some minor changes in it, but everything is going to be done. Minor changes means we do need to add some additional columns or maybe remove some existing columns and so on. Nothing more than that. Talking about the table type and the ownership type, this is also a one thing we need to understand it before going towards the exam. So in the table type, there are two different types of tables can be created. The first one is a standard table. The second one is an activity table. So a standard table means we are creating a normal entity, a normal table where we need to store my data. But when it comes that we wanted to store the activities what we are doing, so in that situations we need to select the activity table for it. So let's suppose that I'm creating one of the leads table, and after having that leads table, I'm saying that I do wanted to have a table where I can store my phone call records, whatever I'm making to my customers. So because I need to store the phone call records, so I do need to create that activity table, and I have to associate it with my leads table, because whenever a lead is going to be generated, only then I'm going to make a call to that person. So that is how the activity tables can be created, and we can associate it with the respective tables, whatever I'm having. Talking about the ownership type, so we're going to have a different sets of ownership type. The very first is going to be the user or team. So whenever I'm saying I do need to create a specific table where I do want it to share it with my multiple users so that they can actually create some columns in there, they can remove some columns in there, or maybe they will have the availability available. So in that situations, we can utilize the user or team. And the other benefits of working with the user and team table is whenever a person is going to update a record in this user or team owned table, so the owner field will always going to be filled up by the same user's informations who has created that record, so that we can actually track down who created this record and when. The next thing is that we can also create some organizational basis entities in here. So the organizational basis entities are going to be just like, for example, like the accounts entity, leads entity, contact entity. So these ones are going to be on an organizational basis because my whole organization's persons are going to utilize them, because it's going to be a kind of a centralized data I'm storing. So we can go for the organization spaces here, and every time a record is going to be create in this, every time it will automatically going to populate the company's name in the owner field. However, any of the user has created a record over there. The next one is related to the business own. So we can also go and create some sort of tables based on the business own. Let's suppose I'm creating one of them for my sales business, for one of them for my customer service related scenarios and so on. So we can also define what kind of business I'm going to deal with and which kind of data is going to be stored over there. Talking about some properties of the table. So there are going to be a different sets of properties while creating the tables. We do need to have the knowledge of that before going towards the exam, because sometimes we are getting the questions about some properties, whether for creating that kind of table, which kind of property need to be enabled or disabled over there. So you do need to have that knowledge to be available and what kind of properties we can create. So the first thing is that we can change the table type and ownerships we just discussed. We can also go for collaborating for enable for activities. So whenever I'm creating an activity table that is going to be associated with one of the standard table, in that situations we need to enable the collaboration option, and here the collaboration option is going to be available. You can select which kind of collaboration do you want it to complete, whether you wanted to go for allowing the feedback to be sent, enabling for activities, enabling for connections with the multiple areas, or sending emails to those tables and so on. So you can specify the things in the collaboration one. The third one is you can update some settings, like do you want it to create a quick create forms while creating the table. If you wanted to enable it, you can just enable that button. Until we are not enabling this specific option in the table creation, will not be able to create any kind of create form from the Dataverse area for my application section. We all can also go ahead and enable the settings here called for duplication detection. So in the Power Platform, whenever I'm going to update, create a record in the same table where this option is enabled, so it will going to verify my values, whether I'm putting the values on a duplicate ones or it's a unique value. And if a duplicate value is going to be present, then the Dataverse will going to give me a pop-up that you are entering the duplicate value. If I wanted to continue with the duplicate value, I can go for saving and ignore. Other than that, I can just understand that this is a duplicate value, so I can change the values from my table itself. Also, we can enable the tracking scenarios. Like if you wanted to have a track record available that what are the changes has been made till now against my table. So for completing this, you can enable the settings in here called enable change tracking. Other than that, you can also go and have some tables to be configured for online working. If you wanted to allow your user to work with some database or some tables on an offline mode without having the connectivity with the internet, so you can enable it for the mobile offline as well. You can also go ahead and enable the Dynamic 65 capability for online working with the Outlooks. So these two options are going to be available for the offline mode as well. Then after, if we'll talk about the relationships, that is also a most important part in the Dataverse. So what kind of relationships we can create? So we can create one-to-one relationship, or else we can create one-to-many relationships, or many-to-many relationships. These three types of relationships are going to be present. The first one is one-to-one. So whenever we are creating a record, the two different tables, and I wanted to connect two columns with each other to have the same type of values to be inserted. So we can go for the one-to-one relationship over there, which is going to look the values from one table only, depending upon my one conditions, which I'm having in the current one. Same way, we can initialize the one-to-many relationship table that will going to help me to call up some values from the different table. Like let's suppose I'm having one of the table called webinars. So I'm having the webinars table, but I do wanted to know against that webinar how many of the persons are going to I just wanted to send the information that this webinar is going to be happen. So instead of sending those informations one by one, what I can do is I can create a one-to-many relationship from webinar table to the customer entity. And accordingly, I can call up the customer's value directly for the webinar sections, that how many of them are attending, how many of them are available in the class, and so on. So in that scenario, this one is going to be happen. If we wanted to do the same thing on a both sections from the both phase, like the webinars can expect the multiple customers, and the same way the same single customer can also expect the multiple webinars to be attended. So in that situations, we need to create a kind of a many to many relationships between both the tables in here. So in both situations, we can start working with it. The next thing is that whenever we are talking about creating some new columns or modifying some existing columns in the Dataverse, so how can we achieve that goal? For achieving that goal, here are the steps written. One more thing, whenever we are discussing about any sorts of steps, so you need to remember those steps as well before going towards the examination, because in the examinations they are going to provide you the steps, but it doesn't mandatory whether they are providing it from the step number 1 or from the another steps. So that can be possible, maybe in all the steps the first step is always missing, and you need to select the second step first and the third step and the fourth step. Sometimes first 3 steps are going to be missing, and then you need to arrange the other steps apart from that. So these ones are also going to be present, these kind of questions. So we always need to make sure about that and have to knowledge about all types of steps whatever we are following in a hierarchical scenario. Talking about creating and configuring the view in the Dataverse. So whenever we wanted to create the multiple sets of views, we can actually follow these steps over there, in which we first of all need to go to the Power Platform area. Then we need to go to the data sections, that is for my Dataverse. Then you need to select the tables. After that, you can select the view on the top menu, and then you can click on the add view to create a new one. And then you can create some views, and then you can publish it and save it. So these are the steps are written for the creation of the views as well. Talking about the business rule. So what is going to be the business rule and what is going to be the scope for it? So business rule is something which will help us to have a rich data to be available in my current environment. And these rules are going to be applicable towards my single entity. So whenever we are having a table or the entity, both things are the same. So we can actually create some business rule accordingly. We can decide if this thing happen, I need to perform this action. Like let's suppose I'm saying, if one of my table I'm having related to the webinars, in the webinars, I would say I have enabled a toggle button for one column called are we having any attendees for it? If I'm enabling that specific column as yes, then the condition is going to be to check that value whether it's yes or no. After getting the result, I'm saying if it's a yes value, I do want it to perform some action where I would like to ask the specific person to add the attendees values also in the webinars table. So these kind of things can be applicable. So every time we can create some business logic rules in here, and the scope is always going to be the tables, as well as we can create it over to our forms. Also, we can specify this thing like for which kind of forms is going to be applied. And it will always going to show us into the model driven applications in there. So whenever we are creating a model driven app, we can actually get the result in the inside the application itself. Same way, we can also take another example for the business rule. Let's suppose in my company, I'm having one of the expense table, and in the expense table, I'm saying each and every person of my company is updating their expenses over them. And if I'm saying that if the expense amount of each and every expense is going to be greater than $500, in that situations, I wanted to trigger a flow in the background that will get the approval for that expense first. Until the approval will not going to be get from the manager, I would like to not share this record with my accounting. So In that situation, we can create a business rule where I can decide that if the expense amount is going to be greater than 500, I do want it to enable one button or maybe change the value of my approval required column to yes. And once the approval required column is going to be yes, then we have created a power flow in the background, and accordingly the flow is going to be initiated. But this value can be changed using the business rule in here. So that is how the business rule can be applicable and can be useful to us. The next thing, talking about how to configure and test the business rule. So here is the process. You can actually go for the table in which you wanted to create a business rule. Then you can actually go for the new button first of all, and then you can select that I do wanted to create a business rule. After that, you need to specify the name and the description for that scope. Then you need to specify what condition I wanted to add. You can specify what properties are going to be added under that condition that needs to be checked. And then you can set the validate button, and then you can specify some actions need to be triggered. And also you can define what kind of values I wanted to put it up in here. And once it's done, you can validate your business rule. Then after, you can save your business rule, and then you can click on the activate button to start running that business rule into your background. So this is how the business rule can be created. That is the step is going to be present. Talking about some auditing scenarios. So whenever we are saying that we wanted to configure some audit rules or maybe the audit logs against my entities of the Dataverse, so on a default note, it is going to be disabled. But if we wanted to enable the auditing, so we do need to enable one option from my environment settings, and where the setting is going to be present. So you can actually find out that setting in your environments area. Inside the environment, you can find out one option called audit settings, and then you can select start auditing. Once you're going to enable that start auditing, the log access and read logs are going to be enabled automatically, and it's going to start storing your logs for them. So this is the audit settings that can be configured. So sometimes in the questions, it can ask you that whether on a default note, the audit logs are going to be available for the changes you are making in the Dataverse table or not. So for that question, the answer is going to be no, that by default it's not enabled, but we can do enable using this settings in here. So this is how the questions can be appear, and this is the specific topic we are having. Next thing, if we'll talk about, so in the Dataverse, sometimes it's going to ask you the questions about importing the data as well as exporting the data from your side. So over there, we are going to have some options in the environment using the data section where we can either import our data or either we can export our data. So we do need to know what options are going to be available over there, that what kind of source I can select for importing my data, whether I can only import the data from the Excel file or from the Word file or from the SharePoint itself or from the OneDrive area. So we do need to have that knowledge first of all. So before going to the examination, please do make sure that you know what kind of formats we can actually select for importing the data or for exporting the data, and from where we can actually do that, and what is going to be my step. So in these three things needs to be understood by yourself whenever you are going for this PL200 examination here. One more thing, whenever we are importing the data, so while importing the data, we do need to select about the source column as well as the destination column, so that the values can be stored on the same column where I do want it to store them. So this is also one thing it's going to ask you, that whenever we are importing the data from Excel file, will the Power Platform allow me to select the respective columns for those values or not? That kind of question can be also present in the examination form. The next one is whenever we are talking about exporting the data, so we can easily export my any kind of data from my model driven app towards these formats. So we either I can open it directly in the Excel Online, either I can open it in the static worksheets, either I can open it in the dynamic worksheets, or either I can apply some dynamic pivot table over there, or either I can directly export it to the Excel file on a downloadable form. So each and everything is going to be available. We just need to make sure we know all the options and also the use case of these options. Talking about the next concept, which is coming under the Dataverse. So it's going to be your business unit concept. So we always need to make sure about what is a business unit, why we are using the business unit, what is the benefit of using them, and how can we start using them. These four things has to be understood by you guys before going to the examination. So here I'm saying that what is the business unit? So it's going to be known as a kind of a logical container which will help me to categorize some sort of users into a single place. By default in the Dataverse, we are going to have one business unit to be available, and that business unit is going to be known as the root business unit. We can also create the level of hierarchies inside that. Like I can create the business unit for my sales department, for my marketing department, for my IT department, and accordingly I can also create some security roles for it, for which kind of business unit the security role is going to be available, and to those users we can actually associate them and so on. So every time we need to understand those things. How many levels of hierarchy we can create for the business unit? So most probably we are using 4 to 5 level of hierarchies, but you can actually use more than that. In each and every business unit you would need to have one parent unit to be selected. Until that, the business unit cannot be created, because at the end there is going to be only one business unit on the top, and that is known as the root business unit here. You can also change the users to be included inside your business unit. You can decide that if I have one of my user in my sales business unit and now he's moving to the marketing team, so I need to just drop it from my that business unit and wanted to transfer it towards another business unit. So that option can be possible without even deleting the record. So we just need to open that customer's record or the employees record, and then we can change the business unit option only. So that can be possible over there. So you need to have that knowledge available. Talking about the roles, so we can also go and create some security roles, and why the security roles are going to be available and why we have to utilize them. So the security roles are going to be provide us a way to provide a kind of a authorization or the permission to access the data against my table from my Dataverse towards all of my user. So whenever I'm saying that I have created the account entity and I do wanted to share that account entity data to one of my employee name as Ayush. So in that situations, I do need to create a role for it. I do need to specify in that role that Ayush need to have the permission of that account entity, and which kind of permission the Ayush will going to have it, whether he is going to have the read only permission, or maybe the create permission, or maybe the list permission, or maybe the append permission, or maybe the delete permission, and so on. So we can respectively select what kind of permission I'm defining, and also which level of permission I'm defining, whether the Ayush can only edit and create their own records, whether they can manage the other team members record, whether they can manage their whole parent unit business records as well, that means their upper level business record, and either they can manage the whole organization level business record. So in all the situations we need to select those things. So in while creating the business, there's a specific security role, we need to decide what kind of permission I'm defining, and also which level of permission I'm defining. So both of the options are going to be available. The third thing which is need to be make sure while creating the security role is against which table I'm defining the role, and whatever table I'm going to select, only for that specific table the person is going to have the availability to see the data based on the level I selected, and based and have going to be available for performing the action depending upon the permissions I have defined. So these things need to be make sure. So that is something what we are having inside the Dataverse environment. If you guys have any kind of questions from the Dataverse part, you can proceed with your questions now. Okay, so let's go ahead and try some practice questions, that what kind of questions are going to become in the examinations based on this specific area called Dataverse. So let's go through with the very first question right away. And in this question, the question is, when creating a table, what are the two types of relationship you can create? Whether it's your option one, one to many or one to one relationship, it's your option two, one to many to many relationship, or it's option three, many to one or many to many relationship, or maybe it's option four, one to one and many to many relationship. I'm going to give you guys a 30-second of time here to answer this question. So kindly go ahead and provide your valuable answers in the chat. Okay, so the answer for that question is going to be option second, that we can only create these two types of relationship. Previously, we were creating the three types of relationship. The third one is one to one, but now it has been discontinued. So only two types of relationship are present. That is your one to many and many to many. So this is the first question we are having this. No, Pooja, we're not going to cover those APIs things because we were not discussing about the course. But you can actually opt for the course content and where you can find out those things. Okay, so the next questions we are going to have in the list is, you have to set up a business rule for your solution. What components will you need to consider? Whether you need to consider the condition and scope while creating the business rule, you need to have action and scope while creating the business rule, you need to have condition and action only, or do you need condition, action and scope to create a business rule? What's your answer, guys? You can proceed your answers in the chat box. Okay, so time's up now. So if we'll discuss that what components we can actually need for creating a business rule. So correct answer is option four. We do need condition, first of all, against which the business rule needs to be triggered. Then we do need some action, that what is going to happen after triggering this business rule. And also we need to have the scope, that over to which table or which column this business rule needs to work. So these three options need to have present while creating the business rule. So option four is going to be the right answer. If we'll talk about another question now in the list, so it's saying that whenever we are deploying a role-based security in the Microsoft Dataverse, so which of the following products allows you to control access to the tables for different users? Whether it's your SQL server, whether it's your Azure portal, whether it's your Dynamics 365, or it's your SharePoint. So kindly proceed with your answers in the chat box. Let's just wait for 30 seconds here. Okay, so the correct answer for that question is going to be the option 3, that the dynamics environment will going to allow us to control over to the tables itself for the multiple users, because we are creating the security role in the dynamics area itself, not any other place. So we do need to come to the Dataverse environment in the dynamics, and then we can create the security rules which will allow me to manage which of my user will going to have access of the data to be retrieved from which table at which level, and what kind of CRUD permission action they can actually perform. So this is the answer for that question. Okay, so we are having a next question in the line. Which table type is not going to be a part of your Dataverse? Whether it's your standard table, it's your complex table, it's your open table, or it's your restricted table. Your answers on the chat, please. Okay, so the correct answer for that question is going to be the option 3rd, that we do not have the open type of table that can be created in my Power Platform area. Okay, so that is all the things which we are having in our very first part of this Power Platform environment. Now we're going to move ahead with our very next part, where we are going to cover some basic topics that are important for the exam related to the Power Apps in here. So let's start this session, this section now. In this section, we're going to discuss about all the 3 types of application here. The very first is model-driven app. The second one is Canvas app, and the third one is Portal app. So let's have a look about what are the things we need to learn about these different kind of apps for passing the exam. So the first aspect which needs to understand by you guys related to the model driven app is going to be the form. So in the Dataverse, in your Power Platform, we will have 4 different types of forms that can be created. And what 4 different types of forms can be created? So we can create the main form here. What is the main form? So the main forms are going to use in the model driven app whenever we wanted to work or edit a specific record from the table, just to ensure that users interactions with that record will going to stay in that same constant of the table. So in that situations, we need to go with the main form. The second type of form we are having in the Dataverse is quick view form. So what is a quick view form? A quick view form is going to be a kind of a form which will help me to see some basic information about the selected record from the different table, and it will only going to be applicable once we are having the relationship between 2 different tables. So for an example, I'm saying that we are having 2 table called account, and also we are having the different table called contact. So I am saying that in the account entity, I'm creating one of the record for the GTech. And then in the contact, I'm creating some record for the, I'll say maybe for Shivam itself, maybe for Kuldeep, maybe for Ayush, maybe for Steve, or maybe any other records itself. So whenever I'm creating those contact records, and inside the contact record, I am selecting the GTech account as a organization based account. So in that situations, I do want to see some details in the contact area about the organization name, organization mobile number, organization email ID, and the organization website. I would say I would like to call these four informations in this contact entity whenever we are selecting a contact which is related to this GTech account. So for displaying that kind of data, whenever we wanted to get that data to be displayed in another table from a different one, so we do wanted to use this quick view form in that situations. And for doing so, we do need to have a relationship of one to many from the respective table where I'm displaying the data. So here I can have the contact to account relationship available one to many. So here it's going to be the one record, or sorry, it's going to be the one record to the many contacts. So under one organizations, we can have the many contacts available. And whenever we are selecting the account itself, it's going to show me the account name, account website, account email ID, and their business phone number. So these informations are going to be listed. So this is how the quick view form is going to be work. The third type of form which can be utilized in the Dynamics is the quick create form. So what is a quick create form? So whenever I'm saying that I do wanted to create a new record in the Dynamics in the model driven app. So in the model driven app, we need to fill up a main form for creating or updating any of the records, right? Let's suppose in the main form, we are having approximately 60 to 70 fields to be filled. But I do wanted to create a record only by utilizing 3 or 4 values, not more than that. Let's suppose I'm having a workload in my company where my data entry person needs to update 500 records within next 3 hours in the Dynamics so that I can send the mail to all of them, just to welcome kind of a welcome mail that welcome to the GTechLearn organizations and so on. So how can we achieve that goal? The first thing, either we can create a desktop flow and that can be achievable. The next thing is that we can actually go for using the quick create form in that situation. So why to use the quick create form? Because if we are working with the main form, we do need to enter the values in all the fields, whatever it is present in this, and then the records can be saved. But not all the values, but maybe whatever the required values need to be filled. Let's suppose out of this 60 to 70 fields, we do have some 10 required fields that needs to be filled in each and every record. But I do have some information about only 4 fields of them, and I do wanted to create a records from that values. So in that situations, I can utilize this quick create form, and we can just click on the plus button on the top of my model driven app. The quick create form is going to be app open, and over to that, we can insert the limited values. After inserting it, we can click on the save and close it from the bottom, and my record is going to be created. However, I haven't filled all the 10 required columns in my table. So this is also a one benefit whenever we need to create a new record by using some certain values or the minimum values. In that situations, we can utilize this quick create form. The next type of form we are going to have is going to be the card form. So what is the card form? Card form is basically going to be work as a view for your model driven apps, and they are going to present some informations on your mobile devices. So whenever I'm saying that I'm having one of the model driven app, for an example, let's suppose a customer service app. So this is one of the Dynamics app we are having. So I'm opening that customer service app on my mobile phone. We know that model driven app is basically going to be utilized for the data management on the laptops and the desktops, but we can open the model driven app in the mobile itself. So whenever we are opening that same app in the mobile, and because it's not created for the mobile, and I do want it to display some record, so in that situation, we need to utilize the card form to display that data. In the card form, I can decide which fields need to be displayed over to the mobile interface. So that's why the card form is going to be utilized. So these are some 4 different types of forms which is available that can be an important one. Apart from the form section in the model driven app, we do need to create some views also. Like in the model driven app, how my data is going to be look like, which kind of data I wanted to look on the front page of my app, whether it's going to have my active contact view only, or do I need to display the inactive contacts, or do I need to display approximately of let's say a kind of a contact against a same company like the GTechLearn and so on. So we can always decide those things while creating the views. So what kind of views we are having in the dynamics? We are having 3 different types of view. The very first is personal view. The second one is system view. And the third one is public view. So the personal view is going to be owned by an individual person. Let's suppose being an business analyst in the GTechLearn, I wanted to create my own view, which can be seen only by me. And I wanted to add it onto my own model-driven app to get the data to be on a very filtered note. So I can go for creating some personal views that is only going to be applicable for myself, and I can only get the data from that view. None of the other user will be able to utilize that view itself. The second type of views are going to be known as the system view, which is going to be pre-created in your environment, like the active contacts view, inactive contacts view in the contact table, in the account tables, active account, inactive account views. So these ones are going to be available over there. Same way for the different tables, there are going to be some certain types of views are going to be available, and those views are going to be on a public note. So these ones are going to be known as a system view, which has been generated by the system itself, by the system administrator. However, you can make the changes in it, whatever kind of changes you wanted to make, whether you wanted to add the column, remove the column, or sort the data based on the conditions, and so on. The third type of view is going to be a public view. Public views are basically going to be created a custom view for all my persons which I'm having in the organization. So let's suppose I'm creating one of the view where I'm only seeing the data in my leads entity about those leads who have completed their third stage of my business process flow. So I've created a view. I have associated if those persons will going to have the data available in these columns, only then I wanted to display their data. So I can create that condition. Accordingly, I can create a view, and based on that, I can create that view on a public node. So this view will going to be known as the public view here. And each and every user from my organization can access it. The third thing which we are having in the model driven app is creating a charts. So for analyzing my data based on the view I am selecting, we can utilize this chart and we can create some dynamics charts to display the data into my website. So whenever I'm opening the model driven app, I just need to click on this button called show chart on my area, and then the chart is going to be displayed, whatever type of chart I'm selecting. So this is the steps of creating the charts in here. You just need to go to the Power Apps in your Dataverse environment, and then you will find the chart on that menu. And you can just need to click on the add chart from there. And then you can select which field are going to be applicable to my legends entries, which field needs to be application to my horizontal axis, and what kind of data is going to be displayed here, which kind of chart am I creating, whether it's a column chart, bar chart, pie chart, or so on. You can select all those informations in here, and then the chart can be created. Moving forward to that, the same way we are creating the charts, the same way we can go for creating the dashboards as well. So in the dashboards, we can follow these steps, and based on that, we can create the Dynamics 365 dashboard. By default, in the in your model driven app, we can only create the Dynamics dashboard and associate the Dynamics dashboard. But we can create some Power BI dashboards also, and also we can associate them in the model-driven app itself if it's necessary. So for doing so, we just need to enable one setting in the environment by enabling the Power BI integration, and then the thing can be happen. This is the step for creating the Dynamics 365 dashboard. You just need to go for the entity and over to which you wanted to create a dashboard. Then you need to go for the new button, then the dashboard selection, and then you need to select the desired layout. And then you need to select whether you wanted to import a chart in this dashboard, or do you wanted to import the web resource, or do you wanted to import any kind of online tool in it, or maybe the listing some sort of data from the environment and the other things. You can select those respective components, and based on that, you can create the dashboard itself. Also, when we are talking about creating the app, so while creating the app, you can also go for applying some organizational branding them. So you can go for customizing your themes itself relatively for your app. You can specify what is going to be my logo, whether it's for your whole model driven app logo, or maybe for each and every entity which I'm selecting for display, their logo I wanted to change, or do I wanted to change the dashboard's color, or maybe I wanted to insert the logo on the back end of my app and so on. So we can actually go and start creating those kind of customizations also using the theme section. We just need to create the theme from my environment, and then we need to publish the theme, and then we can utilize it into our app. Talking about sharing a model-driven app, so you can actually share the model-driven apps with a very easy note by sharing the role-based securities for the different users. Whenever we are saying that if a person wants to use the app, they do need to have the security role available against which they wanted to access it. So we just need to share the app with the respective person. And once the specific person will going to have the security role associated, they will be able to access that app, and they will be able to get the data to be displayed. Talking about the Canvas app now. So the Canvas app is going to be mostly used for creating a mobile apps, or maybe it's a tablets app. So we can create the Canvas app in these two factors only. Sometimes in the exam, it can ask you a question that what different types of factors we can utilize for creating the Canvas app. So only two types of factors can use. The very first is the mobile one. The second one is the model driven. And what are the different ways to create the specific Canvas app in here? So we can create it either from the template, either from the data source, either a blank canvas. Same way, the model driven app also can be created either via template or via blank. After selecting the blank, you can select whatever the data you are having in the Dataverse, and then you can have that application to be enabled. Talking about the data sources that can connect from both model driven and the Canvas app in here. So in the model driven, we can only utilize the Dataverse, but in the Canvas app, we can utilize the multiple source. Like either I'm having the data in my Dataverse, or the SharePoint, or the OneDrive on my physical PC, on my SharePoint server, on my internal SharePoint server, on my Outlook server, on my file servers, a storage account of my Azure, or maybe any of the third-party place, or maybe it's on a SQL server. So in each and every location, I can create the connections for it, and based on that, I can call out the data. So the Canvas app will going to allow me to select the multiple data sources for creating this mobile app in here. Talking about configuring an app. So whenever you wanted to configure a Canvas app, you just need to come to this create button. And from the create button, you will find the respective some basic sources available. And what are the sources are going to be present? So the very first source is going to be the Dataverse. The second one is going to be the SharePoint. The third one is going to be the Excel. The fourth one is going to be the OneDrive. And the fifth one is going to be the Outlook. So these are the sources which is going to be available on a pre-created node. You just need to select the respective connector. And after selecting the connector, you can go for creating the connections, and then you can call out the data against which you wanted to generate an app, and how much of time it will take for creating my app. So it will only take a 30 seconds of time to create you a demo app, and that demoed app will going to have three screens. The very first is going to have the front screen. We can call it as a main screen, and then we are going to have a detail screen, and then we are going to have a edit screen. So these three screens are always going to be present with my Canvas app. You can also go and select the respective fields which I wanted to display in there, and so on. So whenever we are selecting the pre-created data, pre-created app is going to be present. If we do wanted to make any change, we can go for change in here. Otherwise, the application can be created automatically. Talking about what kind of templates I can use if I wanted to increase the screen size or decrease the screen size or change the screen size. So here are some templates available. So I can select the specific screen template from this area, whether I wanted to go for the blank, a scrollable one, or a list type, or a tutorial type, success, form type, email type, and so on. You can select the respective Canvas screen template. Based on that, you can get your app data to be displayed. You just need to select the respective source that from where the data is coming, and then the second screen will going to be have for edit ones. You can utilize the navigate function to navigate from one place to another. Moving forward to that, if I'll talk about some components and the properties we can utilize in the Power Apps in here. So here are the list of those components and the properties that can be managed by us in this Canvas app area. So what are they? Talking about the components. So what kind of component I can utilize? So I can utilize the icons in there to create some icons. We can go for creating some shapes. We can go for using the navigate function to navigate from one screen to another. We can utilize the galleries to display the data. We can utilize the views again to display the data. We can use the forms to get the data from the customer end or from the user end. And also we can utilize a recorder. Recorder could be your voice recorder. Then we can utilize the images also to display some images in the list or in the data itself. You can also go and utilize the audio function to insert any kind of audio file in the application. You can also go for using the personalizations area, where you can actually make some personalization changes, that how the interface should be look like. We can also go and insert some charts. We can insert some labels to be added. We can also go for having some text input. We can go for having some HTML text input. We can also go for having some pen input, the list box, combo box, checkbox, radio, slider, rating, toggle, timer, button. So these ones are going to be the components, and apart from them also we are having a lots of other components also we can be utilized. And what tool we can use for working with the Canvas app, whether it's for creating or editing, so we can utilize a tool called Power App Studio for working with it. Talking about the properties we are having, we can change. So we can change a lots of properties for the app, whether it's for my default property, that how my default data is coming for the app, items property, that whatever the component I have added, how that component are going to be react. Also we can select the on change or on select property. It will going to depend upon the component itself, that whenever we are selecting that component, which function need to be triggered, or we are changing a component, which function needs to be triggered, and so on. We can also go and change the text property while creating the text input. We can also change the hover property, which will help me to understand why this icon is available in this app area, so that I can use that icon accordingly. We can also go and have some tooltip function available. We can also create the tooltip properties. We can also go and create the visibility property, that when the button or things is going to be visible after filling out the forms and so on, or do I want it to not visible it. So we can decide those situations. We can also decide the disabled options. Sometimes we do want it to disable some components for some conditions, so we can utilize that property. We can also go and utilize the personalizations properties itself for changing the look of my app and feel. So these are some properties we can make a change. Apart from those properties, based on the different component I'm selecting, there are going to be a lots of different properties for those components also. These ones are going to be the basics ones, which is going to be available for each and every component what I'm using in the Canvas app. Moving forward to that, if I'll talk about managing the apps. So whenever we wanted to talk about managing the app, so what kind of action we can perform? So the first thing is that we can go for changing the app name as well as the icon. We can go for editing the app. We can provide the co-owner permission to the respective user whom I wanted to allow to make a change inside my app itself. We can also go for exporting and importing the application from there. We can also go for deleting an app if it's not required now. We can also go for checking the app license itself, whether this app has the proper license available or not. By accordingly, the data is coming from which location. We can also go and restore my app to the previous version. So in this area, whenever we are making a change, every time whenever we are publishing, a new version is going to be published for that app, and the previous version is still going to be available in my environment. So if I do wanted to make a change towards my previous version, so I can actually switch the thing. I can actually publish my previous version also as the latest one, and none of the versions are going to be deleted. So when how many of time I'm doing it? Every time a new version is created, and all those versions are going to be listed in my version area. So this is also a one thing we need to remember, that we can use the version functionalities as well in this Canvas app. Talking about the app analytics data. So whenever we are saying for the app analytics data, so we can actually decide who can view these reports. So whenever we are creating those reports, the reports is basically going to be available on your make.powerapps.com portal itself. Who can view those reports? So these persons who are having those roles available, called environment admin, Power Platform admin, Dynamics 365 admin, or Microsoft 365 global admin, can actually get that data about my app analytics. That inside the app, how many users are working, how many API calls am I receiving, how much of calls we are responding on time, what time specifically we are taking to respond a single API call, and so on, and which entity has been affected most by the users in this app, and what are the records of them, how many calls has been made by which user. So this kind of report is automatically going to generated, and these persons can actually see those reports also if it's required to analysis. Talking about where the data is going to be stored. So the data is going to be stored only on that same region and the environment where your environment is created. Let's suppose at the time of environment creations, I have created it in the East US. So the data is going to be stored in my East US location itself. What is the maximum time period for storing that data? So it can be stored by 28 days only. And the data refresh cycle is about 3 hours from the last refresh time. So every time we are storing some sort of data or we are saving some data, it will going to store that data till 28 days from that now. What are the available reports? So there are going to be 6 types of reports available. The users report of my app, location report from where I'm getting the request, total errors report, how many errors has been counted till now, service performance report, that how much time we are taking to respond that API call, connector reports, that how my connector is responding based on the data connection I have created. Also, if you wanted to download those data reports, so we can also download those reports by selecting the export data option. How to change the environment? So we can actually go for changing the environment by exporting and importing the app, the first option. Either I can add the app inside the solution, and using the solution import and export, we can actually get the app into a different place. So each and every situation is going to be a different one depending upon what kind of achievement we wanted to achieve. So accordingly, we can select the respective options. Talking about the portal apps. So how the portal apps are going to be work? So first of all, the portal apps can also be utilized only by your Dataverse data. So whatever data I'm having in my Dataverse, we can only use them. And based on that, we can create our website. The difference of creating the website from the SharePoint to the portal app is the SharePoint can be applicable only for internal users. However, the portal app can also be accessed by my stakeholders, by my business partners, by my shareholders, as well as my existing customers, and so on. So we can also communicate with them if we are providing a specific permissions to them to access my app. So they can easily access it over to the public internet, and they can actually log in themselves to get their informations to be displayed. You can easily go for provisioning the data inside the portal app inside your environment. And who can actually provision a portal? So this is also a one question. Maybe some of the time in the examination, they are going to ask what role is required to create a portal app. So in that situation, these two options are going to be present. The very first is system administrator role. Also, who are having the environment maker role or the app maker role can also create your portal apps in there. So this is also one questions that can be utilized. The talking about the components of the portal app. So in the portal app, we can utilize the different components called web pages for creating the multiple pages and to connect with each other. We can also utilize the form section to display the data or to get the data from the customer end. We can also utilize the navigation function to allow the users to navigate themselves to the multiple pages itself. We can also utilize the snips over there. We can use the list to display the data. We can get the views to be created, what kind of data needs to be displayed, and so on. We can also go for creating the multiple columns as well as the multiple sets of themes. So these ones are going to be the components of my app here. After that, if we are talking about the portal security and authentication, so whenever we are creating a portal app, so there are two things which is going to be applicable. The first thing is authentication. The second thing is authorization. In both the concept, my accessibility is going to be available. Talking about what is authentication. So authentication means that whenever a user will try to access my app, he needs to provide a username and the password, and we are going to verify whether he's a authenticated user that can access my app or not. So that is the first step we are following in terms of security, only to check that person is authenticated. This is the genuine user. The second one is authorization. The authorization will going to decide that if a person makes a login, so what different data he or she can actually access or can see in my portal app. So that will come under the authorization area. So we can decide both the things in my portal app settings area. We can go to the settings, we can decide the authentication as well as select the respective tables against which the data needs to be displayed. So that is something what we are having related to the Power Apps things in here. If you guys have any query related to this part, you can proceed with your queries in the chat box now. Yes, Ajay, right now it hasn't been replaced, but Microsoft is planning to introduce this Power Pages, and most probably after some time it is going to be replaced. Currently, the Power Pages are in a review condition. Okay, so Pooja, over to that area, we need to allow the third-party authentication first, and then we need to add a service provider. Service provider could be your Azure Active Directory or maybe any kind of third-party tool you are using. So you need to add an identity provider first, and then you can decide which users needs to be authenticated. So there's an option in the portal app. We can add that identity provider. By default, it's going to be present your Azure Active Directory. Okay, so let's continue with the questions now here. That what are the questions we are going to expect? What kind of questions in the examination space from this portion here? So the first question from this portion is going to be, if you need to create a Canvas app for a business solution, in how many ways can you do this? And these are the options. Either you can create a Canvas app from a template, either you can create a Canvas app from a data source, either you can go for creating a black Canvas app, or you can select all of them. So your time starts now. You can proceed with your answers in the chat box here. Okay, so the correct answer for that question is going to be all of the above. That means we can utilize any of the options to create a Canvas app in here. The next question is, app checker cannot find a potential accessibility issue and explain why each might be a potential problem. Is it a true statement or is it a false statement? Your answers on the chat. Oh, sorry. Okay, so the correct answer for that one is going to be the false, because the app checker is, we are utilizing it only for that situation when it's going to check my full app and going to give me the potential errors and also to tell me why this error is present. So this is the specific option we are selecting. So the statement is false. The next question we are having is, when building a model driven apps, which designer is used to define the navigation of your app? Whether it's your app designer, whether it's your view designer, whether it's your sitemap designer, or it's your dashboard designer. Your answers on the chat, please. Okay, so the correct answer for that question is going to be the sitemap designer, which will help me to navigate my app depending upon the area selections, as well as the form selections and the view selections, and also the dashboard things. So the sitemap designer is going to be the correct answer. The next question we are having in line is, where do you configure and customize your app? Whether it's in your Power Apps mobile, it's in your Power Apps admin center, it's in your Microsoft Dynamics 365 or Power App Studio. Your answers on the chat, please. Okay, so the correct answer for that question is going to be the Power App Studio, that you can actually configure and create and modify your apps inside your Power App Studio. The next question we are having in line is, which of these statements about the data source is going to be true? Whether the statement one is, in the Power Apps, app data going to comes primarily from your local device. Either the Power Apps is not able to connect to the external data and all data must be stored in the Power Apps application. Either the third option, Power Apps uses the connectors to connect to the data sources. If the data source support it, Power Apps can read and write to the data source. Your answers on the chat, please. Okay, so the correct answer for that question is going to be option 3, that in the Power Apps, like the Canvas app, we can actually decide about these things using the data connectors. We are having the multiple data connectors for multiple data sources. We need to use them and start working accordingly. The question number 6 we are having is, where is the portal metadata is going to be stored? Whether it is going to be stored in the Azure web application, is it going to be stored in the Dataverse, is it going to be stored in the portal solution, or is it going to be stored in the portal management app? Your answers in the chat. Okay, so the correct answer for that question is going to be the Dataverse. Whenever we are talking about the metadata, and because we are talking about the portal app, so we can utilize the data source only from the Dataverse. And because the data is going to be stored in the Dataverse, the metadata is also going to be stored in the same place. The next question we are having is, in which tool can you not create a web page? Whether it's your portal studio, whether it's your front site editor, whether it's your portal admin center, or it's your portal management app. Your answers on the chat, please. Okay, so the correct answer for that question is going to be option 3, that is portal admin center. From that area, we cannot create the web pages because it's going to be my admin center of the Power Platform. The next question we are having in line is, your organization does not permit the use of the custom code for the solutions. You need to create a view that can be viewed by all users in an organization. Where should you create the view? Whether you would create the view in the list view of the entity, whether you will create it in the Visual Studio, you will create it in the templates area, or you will create it in the Maker portal. Your answers on the chat, please. Okay, so the correct answer for that question is going to be option 1. That is, we can create the views from the list view of the entity. So that is something what we have in the second section of this specific course. Now, before proceeding with the next section, let's take a 15-minute coffee break here, and then we'll come back again and we're going to discuss about the rest of the things. Till the time, enjoy your coffee, guys. Okay, guys, so welcome back again after the quick break here. So while we were on break, I received some questions in the chat box. The most common question I received is about the recording of this session. So let me tell you guys that once we will end this session, so the recordings of the sessions will going to be uploaded to our official website of GTechLearn itself. On the GTechLearn, you will find a page called On Demand Webinars, and over to the webinars area, you will find the same recording available just after 1 hour ending the sessions. So that is the answer for that. Other than that, I received another question in here based on the topic. Like the question is, let me read out the question first. So the question is asking by one of the person is, if we assigned any roles to the users from the AAD, the dynamic user doesn't sync with the updated user role from AAD. So any idea how can we resolve the sync issue so that we can change in the AAD group, the Dataverse is going to applicable with the updated user role itself on a updation mode. So the answer for that question is going to be, for achieving this goal, we can utilize one option called Teams in the CRM area. So in your Dynamics CRM area, you will find an option under the advanced security. You will find an option called Teams. So in the advanced security, you need to come to the Teams option. Then after, you need to create one of the team there. And while you are creating the team, there is going to be the type of the team you wanted to create. So it will going to ask you the type of the team you are creating. So in this type of the team, you need to select one option out of the two. The first is, either you need to select we are creating a AAD team of Office, or maybe I'm creating it for the security groups, like whatever the security or the Office 65 groups we are having in the AAD. Based on that, I'm creating a teams in my Dynamics area. Once we have created this team, after that, over to this team, I can associate a role. Like, let's suppose I'm creating one of the team here for my field technicians. So I have updated a role onto this team related to the field technicians. And then we can add the specific user towards the group of that same security or Office 365 from the Azure portal. And then the same user will going to be a part of that specific team in here, and whatever role I have assigned, the same role is going to be applicable to that user also. Ajay, most probably it will take the sync timing of 8 to 10 minutes here, but sometimes because of some internal issues, it may raise up to the time of 20 minutes itself after assigning the roles. So if I'm going to have any kind of links available, so I'm going to share you the links as well at the end of the session, that how can we resolve the sync issues and so on. So this is the solution for it. Now let's move ahead and talk about our next section of this same course. So we will going to talk about the managing the Power Automate in here, the Microsoft Power Automate. So inside this one, we're going to discuss about creating the flows, creating and managing the business process flow, and building some desktop flows. Okay, no problem, Ajay. I'll let you know about the solution for it. Don't worry about that. Okay, so whenever we are talking about the types of the flow we can create in here, so we can create a cloud flow, just like we discussed earlier. Also, we can create the business process flows, we can create the desktop flows, and we can create some classic flow. Classic flow is going to be applicable for my Dataverse environment. Most probably, it is a way to create a flow with the using of 2 or more tables in that. Apart from this, these 3 types of flows can be created from the Power Automate area. Inside the cloud flow, we can create 3 types of cloud flow. The first one is automated flow, which is going to be run based on the trigger I have created. The second one is instant flow, that will going to be known as a button flow also, that whenever we are clicking to run, only then the flow is going to be run instantly and going to give us the result whatever we have wanted to achieve based on this. And the third one we can create is a scheduled flow that can be scheduled for a particular time in a day itself. Other than that, we can also go for creating the business process flow, which will help me to create a business flow onto my current environment over to my own entities, so that my new users, whatever is coming, they can actually able to achieve the same process to completing any kind of task, whatever are going to be assigned to them. And also we can create the desktop flow, which is going to use the concept of robotic process automations in there. And accordingly, we can actually create some desktop orientation task into an automation way. So these types of flows we can actually utilize. Talking about some main component of the Power Automate, so there are going to be the 2 main components based on which the full flow is going to start running. So the first one is a trigger. So what is a trigger? Trigger is going to be a kind of a event which will help us to start the flow. So whenever we wanted to run a flow based on a condition, so the condition can be defined inside my trigger phase, and accordingly the flow will going to be started. After starting the flow, if I wanted to execute any kind of task in there, so for that execution of the task, we need to define them inside my action area. So the action is something where we need to define what task we need to complete based on this specific condition. So these are the 2 different components. We always need to use both the components with each other for creating a successful cloud flow via automated way. If we are not defining anything from these 2, then it might not run the flow properly. The third one is talking about some logic control. So inside the flow, we can actually utilize some conditions, some switch cases as well, that if this thing happen, then which case need to be run. And the same way we can utilize the if else conditions and lots of other things in there. We can also go and utilize the loop conditions, that I need to run this flow until that much thing has not going to be achieved by us. We can also utilize some custom variables itself, whether it's going to be some static variable I wanted to use, or maybe some dynamics variable, by extracting the value from a respective Dataverse table or from any other source of tables itself. We can also go and utilize the error handling. So we are having one of the option available while creating the flow related to the app checker, or the flow checker, sorry, in the Power Automate. Using that flow checker, we can actually see which errors are present in my flow and what are the options why this error is showing. Based on that, we can actually resolve the issues accordingly. Talking about some dynamics content and expressions. So inside the flow, it will allow us to implement some dynamic content also, like whatever the data I'm going to receive from my previous step, I can import the value of that data into my another steps itself by using this dynamic content pane, which is going to be popped up relatively whenever I'm going to click any of the places inside my Power Apps, or sorry, the Power Flow. Same way, if I wanted to utilize the expression thing, so I can also go and utilize the expression thing in here, where I can run some sort of functions and the formulas, and based on that, I can insert the values. Talking about troubleshooting the flow. So whenever we are creating a flow, we always need to go for testing that flow. But before testing that flow, we can utilize the flow checker first for checking any kind of errors in that. After that, once my flow is error free, we need to go for testing that flow first on a test node. It will going to run it for the first time and going to give us the results, whatever we wanted to achieve it. Once we finally find out the same results we wanted to achieve, accordingly, we can review the results, and then my flow is ready to go for my current real-time environment. The next thing is that while creating a business process flow, so the first thing is that the business process flow can be applicable towards a single entity. So it can only going to be shown with the single entity. You need to associate with those entities itself whenever we are creating them. Also, if we wanted to call the values from the multiple tables, so we can actually do that. So whatever stages I'm creating inside my business process flow, we can actually call the multiple data to be stored into the multiple stages, and based on that we can actually achieve our full enrichment of my data itself. So here we need to categorize it into the stages, and also in a single stage we need to define what task need to be completed at this time. So we can go for creating the business process flow. Talking about the desktop flows, so we are going to have two types of desktop flows. The first one is an attendant flow, and the second one is an unattended. So whenever we are creating a desktop flow and I'm creating an automation for my physical machines itself, like how my machines will going to start for a task to be completed in an automated way without any kind of user interference. So we can run them in two bases. The first one is an attendant that will going to be applicable only when the machine is open and the user is logged in. The second one is a kind of a unattended flow. This will going to be applicable for those machines where I have created the connections and everything, but I do wanted to run that flow after making a logout. So in that situations, I just need to open my machine. My machine should be on a running status. However, my user has to log out. So if my user is not logged in, still my task can be completed. We just need to make open my machine in here and in a running condition. Talking about building some web and user interface automations. So while building the desktop flow, you can also go for recording the task. You can also play back that task to execute. You can edit that task, test it, and validate it. So in the business desktop flow, you can actually recording it. First of all the steps what you are performing, then you are checking whether all the steps are defined the same, just like the way I have completed on a recording, or maybe I need to delete some steps, or maybe I need to add some more steps in between them, so we can actually achieve that goal. Other than that, whenever I wanted to run that again, we just need to execute that same playback. Whenever we are starting a new automation, so we can start it whether from the web or from the desktop. So both options are going to be available. Either I wanted to create a desktop flow directly from my website, or I'm having one of the desktop Power Automate desktop application is installed in my machine and I wanted to start working with them. The next one is talking about the recordings. So the recordings can be launched by a specific websites itself. We need to be prepared for doing the steps and so on. We can also go for editing the recorded steps, whatever we are having. Let's suppose we have recorded as steps where I'm specifying a website to be opened in my webmail or in my web browser. Let's suppose on the next time I wanted to replace this website from another one, so I can actually edit my step and I can define another website over there apart from the previous one which we are opening. Then in the actions area, we can edit the actions. We can define which action needs to be triggered at which place. So we can change the specific place also, like the first thing needs to be run here. The second steps is going to be this one and so on. We can also go for copy and paste the same steps if we wanted to same steps to be run twice or thrice in a same flow. We can also go for editing some properties and the action steps. And also we can disable some steps which we do not want it to follow in the current playback scenario. So these are the things which we can actually achieve while creating the desktop flows. Talking about triggering the desktop flow from the cloud flow. So that portion is also a possible thing. We just need to create a cloud flow in my environment, and then we need to select a connector of my desktop flow execution, and then we need to select which flow needs to trigger onto which machine. So you need to create them accordingly. So here my actions are going to be present, whether I wanted to run a flow built by the Power Automate desktop, whether I wanted to run a flow with the specific IDE process, or do you wanted to run a flow built on the Windows recorder. So in both the situations, options are going to be available. So we need to select the first option over there, and then we need to call out the flow which we wanted to run, as well as we need to call out the machine itself where I do wanted to run that flow. Next thing, if we'll talk about, so in the Power Automate portal, Microsoft is also providing us a process advisor over there. The process advisor will going to give us the information about my flow, like what is my flow, how many times it has run, also what is the steps he is following, and also to analyze how many times it has run, how much of time it has taken, what is the average time of running it. So we can get the lots of analytics of my existing flows, whether it's my desktop flow or it's my cloud-based flow. In both situations, options are going to be available. We can also go and gain the insights using the process advisor, that where we are facing the failures, what we can do to remove that failures from my flow, and so on. We can also go for having the collaboration thing to be done, and also we can see some maps and analytics of my flow itself. So the process advisor is also a very good tool to utilize. So that is something we are having in this section of Power Automate here. Now we're going to have some practice questions, but before the practice questions, let me ask you guys if you have any kind of queries related to the sections which we discussed just now, so you can proceed with your queries now. Okay, so let's move ahead here with the practice questions now. So my first question from this segment is going to be, what are the two types of desktop flow that can be run? Whether it's going to be your managed and unmanaged, the option one, the option two, attended and unattended, the option three, real time and delayed, or option four, automated and manual. Your answers on the chat, please. Okay, so the correct answer for that question is going to be attendant and unattended. These two types of desktop flows can be created by us. The next question we are having in this is automated, instant, and scheduled flow, or all of them are a type of a cloud flow or not, whether this statement is true or false. Your answers on the chat, please. Okay, so the correct answer for that question is going to be the option 1. That is, it's a true statement that the cloud flow has the 3 types of flow. That is, the one of is automated, which will run based on the trigger. Second one is an instant, which will run based on the button. And the third one is a scheduled flow, which will be, run based on the time schedule. The next question we are having in the line is, how can you create a flow that occurs daily? Whether it's option 1, we need to create the flow and connect the flow to the calendar. Whether it's going to be the option 2, we need to create the flow and set the flow flag frequency to daily occurrence. Whether we need to set the scheduled recurrence trigger frequency to daily and interval to 1, or we need to create the flow and set the flow flag frequency to hourly and the value to 24. Your answers on the chat, please. Okay, so the correct answer for that question is going to be the option 3, that whenever we are selecting the recurrence trigger, we need to set the frequency as a daily, and then we need to set the interval of 1. The next question we are having in line for this section is, every flow will going to have 2 main parts, a trigger and 1 or more actions. Which of the following best describe an action? Whether it's the option 1, actions are what you want to happen when a trigger is invoked. Option 2, actions will trigger the frequency of the flow recurrence. Option 3, triggers are what you want to happen when an action is invoked. Or it's option 4, flow actions trigger the flow to occur as long as defined value of the trigger is met. Your answers on the chat, please. Okay, so the correct answer for that question is going to be the option 1, that actions are what you want to happen whenever a trigger is invoked. So that is something what we have inside that section itself. The next sections we are having in line is implementing the Power Virtual Agents chatbot. So let me just close this. So inside that sections, again, we are going to have 3 lessons to discuss, the 3 things to be discussed. The very first is creating a chatbot. Next one is configuring the topics. And the third one is configuring the entities. So let's start working. Whenever we are talking about the Power Virtual Agent portal, so it will going to help me to create some chatbots. In the chatbots, we can define some sort of topics, the first step. The second step, we can design a topic conversation path. Third step, we can test my bot. And the fourth one is we can publish our bot. So these are the 4 steps we need to follow for achieving a new chatbot creation. Whenever I'm saying that I need to create one of the chatbot for my company, let's take a scenario here. I am saying that we have a project running related to the implementation of Power Platform to one of my customer itself. So we are running with the project, and my manager Kuldeep Singh is going to be the project manager, and we are going to be working as a solution architect over there. So accordingly, if I would say any of my team member, if ever wanted to get the information about the environment which we need to prepare, the applications we need to prepare, or maybe the flows we need to prepare, or maybe the other things. So what they will do, they will going to send a mail to us, first of all, either to me or to Kuldeep sir, and then they will get the response accordingly. What if we can say that we can create the chatbot for that situations, so the users didn't have to ask the question to the different person. Whatever answers they want, whatever data they want, they can actually get that using the same chatbot, and they can use that chatbot at any time, at any place. So it's going to be available for 24 into 7. However, if we are sending the some emails to us, so they will going to call us, or maybe we need to look up that emails, and then we need to find out the documents and send it to the respective team member itself for the provision. But if we are having the chatbot available, so it will going to help me to get that data in a very easy node without having a problem to talk with someone, or to connect with someone, or to mail to someone. So that kind of situations can be present. Maybe if we are having a 4 to 5 persons of team, it is very easy to communicate with each other, and it's very easy to send the documents with each other, and to also have a look about the progress of them. But what if we are having a very big team? So in that situation, the chatbot will going to help us to understand what is the progress is running for the respective persons, and they can also use the chatbot to get the data whenever they want, whatever they want. They can get all the answers from them itself. The same chatbot can be applicable from for my first line of communication with the customer itself. So whenever a customer will going to call us relatively for customer support, so they are going to handle they are going to handle by the chatbot itself. Maybe most of the time the answers can be diverted by the chatbot, because they are going to be work too fast in comparison of our normal human being. If we are taking a call to take or to perform an actions of 20 to 30 seconds, the same actions can be performed by the chatbot within the 2 or 3 seconds itself. So it will going to help us in many ways, either by costing thing, either for attending more calls in the same duration of time, and also to provide a better resolutions within the given time limit itself. So it will also give us a option to achieve the things within the SLAs. So most probably the chatbot will going to help us in those situations. Whenever we are creating a chatbot, so there are multiple ways to create it. The first one is we can directly go for the Power Virtual Agents portal, and from the portal itself, I can create a chatbot. The second way of creating a chatbot is we can directly create it from my team's environment also. So inside the team, there is an option available for adding an app. From the app list, we can select the chat Power Virtual Agent app, and then we can create a chatbot from my team's environment. Over there, we need to go for selecting the app, and then we need to select the specific entity against which we wanted to create it. Then we need to create the topics and the questions, and then we need to create some triggers, the answers, flows, and so on. So what are the different ways do we are having where the bot can be utilized or can be published? So these are some different services we are having. The first one is we can integrate my chatbot towards my online website. So whenever a person is visiting my website, they can interact with that chatbot, and they can get their respective answers based on their FAQs. The second one is we can integrate the chatbot inside my Power Apps itself. So inside the Power Apps, if we do wanted to have a chatbot for some use case, so we can integrate it. The next one is we can integrate it from the to the Microsoft team itself. In the Microsoft team, we can integrate it from the outer side, or else we can create it from the inside. The fourth one is we can integrate my chatbot to the Facebook's accounts also. We can also integrate my chatbot with some custom applications which we are deploying using the multiple languages and so on. If we'll talk about, so we can also integrate the same chatbot towards my Azure bot services channel. So these are some different services where my chatbot can be integrated. Other than that, we can also integrate it onto the omni channel of the Dynamics, like how the calls are going to be coming from the customer sites to us. Talking about publishing a chat, so what steps we need to follow to publish a chat? So here are the steps are written. Once we have ready with the chatbot, we need to go to the left panel. In the left panel, we will find this publish button. We need to click that publish button to publish my chatbot and to be allow my users to access that chatbot for the use cases. And also we can go for connecting it with the respective omni-channel and the other places. Other than that, once we are using with the Power Virtual Agent environment, the Microsoft is also providing us a capability of live tracking of my app. Also, we can call it as a bot performance area, where I can get the full analytics, like how many calls has been made so far, how many calls we have responded successfully, on how many calls we got some errors, what kind of errors we got, how many users are working on it, what are the type of the topics that can be accessed by the users itself, and lots of other answers. So we can get all those things to be accessed by the analytics portion of my Power Virtual Agent. Talking about calling a Power Automate flow. So whenever we are creating a chatbot, and in the chatbot, if I wanted to run some sort of Power Automate flow in the backend for giving the answers and retrieving the values from the Dataverse or from other sources, so we can actually do that. And here is the step written for doing so. We can call it using an action in the bottom, and then in the action, we can select the option called call an action. Then we need to select the existing app flows itself, or we can also go for creating a new flow. We can define some input and output parameters for it. And then once it done, the flow will going to be triggered at the end whenever the user will reach in that place. And accordingly, the answers will going to be displayed to the respective users. So that is something what we are having in this section of Power Virtual Agent itself. If you guys have any queries related to the Power Virtual Agents, you can proceed with your queries now. Okay, so let's move ahead now with the practice questions, because we do not have any of the questions here. So I'm going with the first question right away. In this questions, it's asking that if you need to configure a new chatbot for your help desk team to answer the question about open ticket status, what is the correct order to the steps to create the new chatbot? Whether it's option one, design a conversation path, then define the trigger phase, then publish the bot, and then test the bot. Either the option two is going to be available, where we need to create the topic, then conversation path, then testing, and then publishing. Either option third, first publish the bot, then define the trigger phase and design the conversation path and test the bot. Or it's option four, initialize the bot framework, create an escalation path, create the bot's appearance, and add the chatbot to the channel. Your answers on the chat, please. Okay, so the correct answer for that question will going to be the option two, where it's saying that first of all, we need to create the topic, then conversation path, then we need to test whether it is actually working on the same way, just like my help desk team demands or not. And then we need to publish the bot. So this is the steps we need to follow. The next question we are having in line is, in order to provide some information about a specific internal user's open help desk tickets, what do you need to configure in the chatbot? Whether it's going to be the option one, create a topic for ticket status, whether the option two, use the Power Automate to retrieve the ticket and status information from the ticketing system, or it's option three, add and the chatbot to the company public Facebook channel, or it's option four, all of the above, or maybe it's option five, A and B only. So your answers on the chat, please. Okay, so the correct answer for that question is going to be the option five. That means A and B. Those two steps we need to follow if we wanted to retrieve the correct information from my ticketing system. So first of all, we need to create the topic, and under that topic, we need to call one of the flow. Now let's move ahead with the next section, talking about integrating the Power Apps with other application and services. So in this one, we're going to discuss about integrating the Microsoft Power BI components. Then we're going to discuss about the AI builder, and we are going to use some templates itself. So let's get started with this section now. In this area, it's saying that whenever we are talking about the analytics scenario, so for analytics perspectives, we can actually go for working with the Power BI tool. Power BI is a part of the Power Platform, but we need to enable the integration first if we wanted to use it onto my Dataverse, or maybe onto my application I'm running, or the data which is generating by my app or by my chatbot or by my model-driven sections. So we can utilize it for creating the visualizations, creating some reports and the dashboards. So whenever we wanted to generate any kind of analytics, we can work with the Power BI itself. Talking about, we can use the Power BI sections to add some tiles to the model driven and the Canvas app. Let's suppose that I have generated a report in the Power BI, or maybe generated some dashboards in the Power BI, and I wanted to display them in my model driven or the Canvas app itself. So we can easily do that by calling up one of the integration from the Power BI and then the report which we wanted to display. So first of all, we need to create the report in the Power BI. We need to publish that report. After publishing, the report is going to be available for the users. And then from the model driven or the Canvas app area, we can call them and add them inside the table. After having the dashboard and the reports available in my table, we can call it inside my applications here. So these are some options that how can we actually achieve that goal. So you guys need to remember those steps also in the questions. Maybe that kind of options can be asked by the exam itself. Talking about creating some AI builder model. So what is a AI builder model? So Microsoft is enhancing the things on a daily to daily basis, and because they are enhancing the things and they are more focusing towards the automation industry, they are also providing you a lots of tool for the automation itself. So they have created some sample AI bots. You can use them in your environment, whether inside your model driven, whether inside your Canvas app, whether inside your Power BI, or maybe inside your chatbot, or maybe at any other places. Depends upon the different use case or the need. So AI builder is going to be that area where those AI bots are available. And where we can find out that option? So we can find out this AI builder option in both the places, whether I am accessing my make.powerapps.com portal, whether I'm accessing my flow.microsoft.com portal. This one is for my apps and this one is for my flow. So in both the portal, the AI builder option is going to be available on the left hand panel. You just need to select that AI builder option. Under that, we're going to have three options to be available. The very first is exploring, where it will give you some basic information about the AI builder and also to show you what kind of capabilities can be achieved by this AI bots. In the models, it's going to show you if you have created any of the bots on your environment. So those ones are going to be displayed in the models area. And the third one will going to give us a document automation option for the documentation related things. And this is the step. How can we actually achieve that goal to create the things? What kind of bots are going to be available? So by default, we are having a lot of type of bots, like for an example, image processing. Like if we wanted to extract the specific content from the image, that can be possible by the AI tool. And the specific bot is available for that. Same way from the document, if you wanted to select a kind of a text, or maybe you wanted to retrieve some values from the document, that can be possible. Also, you can extract some content images from that content area. You can also go for creating some forecasting apps by using those AI bots. And there are lots of other bots are available. You can actually utilize them, depends upon our need. Talking about working with those bots, so whenever we are going to select a bot which we wanted to use, let's suppose I'm using the image processing bot for extracting some content from my images. So we need to select the bot first, then we need to upload 10 to 15 different images over there to train the bot first, according which kind of content I'm retrieving, or which kind of specific products I'm retrieving from my images and so on. So you just need to train your bot. Depending upon the different models, there are going to be a different needs, that how many documents or images things you wanted to upload there and wants to train with them. Once you have trained your model, then you need to test your model. Once it is giving you the result as per your need, you can publish your model here. And once you are publishing the model, it may take up to 4 to 5 hours to actually get available for the real-time use case. So you can go and select the things accordingly. The next one is, apart from this AI builder and the Power BI, the Microsoft Power Platform will also giving us a lots of other applications to integrate with. Like the first one is Excel template, which will help me to export the data from there and also to upload some sort of basic reports which we wanted to create. So if we wanted to run some pivot data over to my one of the details itself, we can utilize the Excel templates, and based on that, I can generate the report on my side, and then I can upload that same template back into my model driven apps using this Excel connector. And then from the next time onwards, whenever our new data is going to be appear, if I wanted to run that report again on the basis of my new data, we just need to download the report and the report is going to be very ready. We do not have to make any kind of changes. So this is the also one thing we can actually do that. And here are the steps are written for it. The next thing, we can also use some Microsoft Word templates. Basically, in my organizations, we are using it for the demo perspectives, where I'm generating some sort of certifications from for my students itself, whenever they are attending some class from us. So once the class is going to be over, a new certificate is going to be generated on an automated way from the Dynamics, and also using the flow, it is going to be sent to the respective person's email ID itself. So that kind of things you can also achieve on your environment. So this is also an option present of the integration. And here's the steps written for it. The next one is configure and use some email templates. So you can also utilize some email templates to be configured, and here are the steps written for doing the same. So these are some options which we are having in here related to this section itself. If you guys have any query about this integration program, you can proceed with your questions now. Michael, do you wanted to insert the images in the content or maybe at any other place? So if you wanted to do it on your body side, yes, we can create the email template and accordingly we can insert the images also. Okay, so let's move ahead with our very first question of this section here. So the first question is going to be, which statement about Power BI integrations with Power Platform is false? Whether it's your option one, Power BI tasks and reports can be added to the model-driven dashboards and the Canvas app, or option two, only the Power BI reports built on Microsoft Dataverse can be integrated with the Power Apps, or it's option three, Power BI alert can trigger the Power Automate Cloud Flow to take automated actions when alerts are generated. So your answers on the chat, please. Okay, so the answer for that question is going to be the option two, where it's saying that only the Power BI reports built on the Microsoft Dataverse can be integrated with the Power Apps. If we are having any kind of other data source of the report, so we can only integrate it in the Canvas app, but the Canvas app has to be built with the same data source also. So if we do not have the same data source already connected, then the report data will not going to be displayed. So that is why it's saying the option two is the right answer. The next one is, which AI builder model would be most appropriate to identify specific products within the images? Whether it's going to be your option one, object detection, option two, text recognition, option three, form processing, option four, prediction. Your answers on the chat, please. Okay, so the correct answer for that question is going to be the object detection. So whenever it will say that you wanted to identify some products within the images, we need to go with the first model here. So that is something what we are having the questions in this section in here. Apart from this, another question asked by the person here, talking about the same thing has been asked by the Michael, that where do we need to store those images? So whenever we wanted to insert our images in the email template for the future use, we need to store them in the attachment entity. So in the Dataverse, there is going to be the attachment entity. We need to upload the images there, and then we can call out the images in my email template from the attachment entities. Okay, so that is going to be the solution. Okay, let's move ahead with our last area of the certification here, talking about managing the solutions. So let's continue. In this one, we're going to discuss about creating the solution in a developer environment, transport the solutions between the environment, and to localize the solution. So whenever we are saying that we wanted to create some solution to contain some solution assets. So first of all, let's understand what is a solution. So in the Power Platform area, there are going to be the two things available on a previous note. The first thing we need to create is an environment, and the second one is need to be the solution. Environment is something, it's a kind of a logical container which will help me to get the different kind of environment for my production, for my developer, for my trial ones, and also for my testing perspectives, like the sandbox one. Same way, inside the environment, if I wanted to contain something at a single place, so over there, we can utilize another logical container, which is known as the solutions here. So the what solution will do, solution will going to help me to contain some sort of things at a same place, like my application to be stored at a same place, the tables attached with this, the flows attached with this, or maybe the business rules we have created, maybe the chatbots we have created. So inside the single solutions, we can actually store the multiple types of things at the same day. So it will help me to contain all those things at a single way. How can we create them? So for creating a new solutions, we need to go and click on the create a solution button from a portal called make.powerapps.com. We need to go to that portal. Then from the left hand area, we need to select the solution area. And then from the solution area, we need to select the create a solutions. After at the time of creating the solutions, we need to select something like name of my solution, also who is going to be the publisher of my solutions, whether it's the CDS or do we wanted to create our own publisher itself, then the version of my solution. Then after, once the solution has been created, we are going to decide what thing I need to add from my existing solutions to this new solution which I'm creating, if we wanted to do that. Otherwise, we can also create the new things in my solution itself. Both the options can be available. Either I wanted to insert, actually add the specific things available in my environment, or do you want it to create a new one? Same way, you can also go for making a changes to be published as well once it's done. Sorry, let me just delete this. So you can go for publishing your changes once the changes has been finished. Moving forward to that, if we'll talk about how to create a solutions and the publisher. So here is the list available, that while creating the solution, you need to select the display name, then publisher, and then click on the create button. But if you wanted to create your own publisher, so then you need to go to the publisher button to create a new publisher. You need to provide the display name of it, the name of it, the descriptions, the prefix, and the choice prefix value. So the choice prefix value is automatically going to be populated once you will fill out the prefix value. So we need to specify those options in there, and here's the steps written for creating the solutions and the publisher itself. Talking about adding some assets. So whenever we are having a solution, from inside the solution, if we wanted to create a new thing, we need to click on the new button from the command bar and then select the respective thing which I wanted to create. If you wanted to add some existing one, so you need to click on the add existing button, and then you need to select which component I'm going to add, whether it's my apps, it's my dashboard, it's my Cloudflow, it's my report or something. You can actually go for selecting it. Once you have selected the component, then in the component area, it's going to show you the available component. You need to select which of them needs to be added. Moving forward to that, when we are talking about the solutions, so each and every solutions or the entities will going to have their own dependencies. So if you wanted to see their dependencies and want to resolve those dependencies, you can actually click on these three dots in here, and then you can click on this button called show dependencies, and then you can actually see those details in here. Talking about setting some environment variable. So the environment variable can be utilized while working with your I'll say the DevOps solutions. So whenever you wanted to integrate your project with the DevOps to implement it into the real-time environment, in that scenarios, you need to utilize some environment variable. So the environment variables can be created from your portal itself. And here is the steps written to create the environment variable, and also whatever the options we need to fill for it. The next one is talking about configuring some managed properties. So you can actually go for creating some managed properties in here as well. You can decide what kind of properties I wanted to allow my users to customize against my table, or whatever of them I do not want to customize, customization done by my users itself. So you can select the respective things from here. And here's the steps written for the same. The next one is you can also go for running the solution checker. So every time you wanted to see whether your solution is a perfectly fine or not, or maybe is there any kind of issues present on my solutions before publishing. So it's mandatory that we need to run that solution checker before exporting and importing it to the different environment. So we can utilize the solution checker button, and accordingly, we can actually check the results. If we are having any issue, so the issue is going to be written. We need to find out that issue and we need to resolve it accordingly. And here is the steps written for doing the so. The next thing is that whenever we will get the specific solution checker run successfully, we can click on the view results here to check what is the detail of my checker, whether the solution checker has passed out my solution successfully, or maybe it has shown me some sort of issues in there. So if the issue is present, it's going to be shown in my details page, and you can see the issue, and then you can change the things accordingly. So here's the steps written for doing the so. The next one is whenever we are talking about exporting the solution from my current environment, from my developer one, to import it in my production. So the first thing we need to make sure is that we are always exporting the solution as a managed one. We do not have to export the solution in an unmanaged condition. The next one is we also need to make sure that whatever solution I am exporting is published already in my current environment, and also it's error free. So while exporting, once you will click on the export button, all those steps are going to be present. You need to follow those steps, and then you can easily export your solutions on your physical node. And how the solution is going to be exported. So it's going to be exported in the zip folder. Talking about importing a solution. So whenever you wanted to import a solution, you first of all need to make sure that you have the required connections that is mandatory to work with that solutions. Let's suppose I'll say that in my solution which I'm importing, I have created a Canvas app who is having a data connection from one of my SharePoint file called employees data. So until I'm not going to have that same connection available in my current environment, we will not be able to utilize that app in here. So first of all, we need to make sure that I am having all the connections available, and then only I'm going to import my solution. So first of all, create the environment and then go for importing my solutions. And the solutions can be imported, the same zip file directly can be imported here, and it will automatically going to read out whatever the contents are present in it and how the contents are connected with the different connections. Same way, once we are saying that for the very first time, being a solution architect, I have created a solutions and imported it in my customer's environment, and now customer is working with it. But later on, customer asked me to do some changes. So I have done that changes in my developer environment, and now the changes need to be replaced only in my customer's production environment. So what we can do is instead of deleting the existing solutions and importing a new solutions, we can utilize this update solution options while importing. So we can import the solutions, but instead of importing, we can select the update option. And here is the steps written for doing so. So you can select what you want to do, and accordingly, the update, the latest changes what you have made, only those ones are going to be updated with your current environment. The next one is whenever we are talking about working with the Power Platform, so it is very mandatory thing that we can create some currencies. So here are the steps written for creating some currencies that we can do it using the business option in my settings of the Power Platform Admin Center. So we can decide on what currency we are dealing with. Talking about the languages pack, so whenever we wanted to work on a multiple languages apart from the standard English, so we need to select those languages from my platform environment from the settings area. So here's the steps written for doing so. We need to enable it. So you guys need to understand that these options are available, and if on a question, on a specific exam, it is asking us that can we implement a same environment with the multiple languages. So you should know that yes, we can implement it, and what the step to implement it. So here's the step written that we need to go to the settings, then product, and then language. So from the language, we need to select the respective language under which we need to work with the environment. So that is something what we are having inside this section here. If you guys have any query related to this section, you can proceed with your queries now. Okay, so let's move ahead with some practice questions of this section here, that let's see what kind of questions can be expected in the exam. So the first question we are having in this place is, if you need to move a finished Power App solutions from your developer environment into production, you just created a new solutions and a publisher, what should you do next? Option 1, resolve the connection references, set the environment variables and test the changes. Or option 2, add the solution components, publish changes and select the publisher. Option 3, set the solution properties to managed and export the solution. Or option 4, import the solution into the production environment. Your answers on the chat, please. Okay, so the correct answer for that question is going to be the option 2, where we need to add the solution components, publish changes, and select the publisher. So these ones need to done in the developer environment. Then we can export the specific solution to my zip file. Then we can import it into our next environment. But before importing, we need to resolve the connection references, environment variables in the upcoming production environment, and then we can import it. So that's how the things will going to be work. So the step number 1 is going to be this. The second step is going to be set the solution properties to manage and export to the solutions. The third step is going to be this one, and the fourth step is going to be this one. So that's how the import and exporting can be completed. Next one we are having in the question is, you are creating a model driven app for an office in Canada. What should you do to make sure that app is available in both English and French? So you need to select all the options that are applies to the correct answer. Option number 1 is configure the app setting to the Canada region, enable the French language pack in the Power Platform Admin Center, export the local localizable text for custom fields and import the French label translations, or integrate to Azure Cognitive Service Translator? Your answers on the chat, please. Okay, so the correct answer for that question is going to be the second and third one, where first of all, I need to enable the language pack from my platform admin center, and then we need to export the localizable text for the custom fields and import the French label translations. So these two options we need to follow to achieve that in things. So that is something what we are having relatively for PL200 exam prep session here. Now I'm going to give you guys a 5 minutes more time to go ahead and put up your queries in the chat so that we can attend them if you guys have any relatively for exam sessions or for the how the exam will going to be come up and the other things. And if you guys wanted to register with us for some upcoming webinars just like this PL200, you guys can go to our websites, that is gtechlearn.com/webinar.aspx, and over there you can register for those free webinars. All of them are going to be free of cost. Also, you can scan this QR code and you can get those things. Other than that, yes, I'm going to share the same slide deck also with all of you. I'm going to share one of the link in the chat box now. You can actually use that link to download this slide decks, which I am using for this exam prep session. So you can download it from there. I have already shared the link in the chat. Arjun, it should be your the same level of questions or maybe some higher level of questions also. Sometimes in the exam, maybe they will give you a kind of a situation in the question, and based on that, they're going to ask the questions accordingly. So it doesn't depend that what question I have asked, maybe the same type of questions are going to be available in the 200 examination, because it's for functional consultant. So they'll surely going to ask the questions based on that level. I have just shown you the demo that how the questions are going to be asked by them. And also some important topics which needs to be covered before going to the examination. Yes, Pooja, GTechLearn is providing those trainings. You can find out the things in our website, that is gtechlearn.com. You can opt for the courses. Also, GTech is providing you a free packages of courses itself for the first 15 days free. You can register yourself using your credit and debit card, and then after 15 days you will receive a email to continue with the course package or not. And under that course package, not only the PL200, but also you will receive the self-paced courses for PL100, PL900, PL400, PL600, and so on. Same way, not only for the Power Platforms, but also for the Dynamics, for Azure, for security platform, and so on. Now let me show you the same thing on my own. So just give me a sec. Okay, so let me open the GTechLearn website. So in here, you can see that the courses we are offering on a free note is relatively for those categories: Microsoft Azure, Power Platform, Dynamics 365, ERP, CRM, security, and the data platform itself. Whatever the type of the course you wanted to select, you can just select the category and relatively how many courses we are offering. You can get those courses to be checked. Apart from them, if I'll come to the home website, so we're also going to have an option here for self-paced course. So you can click on this self-paced learning page. It will going to redirect you to this page in here. In this page, you can actually go for opting for any of the packages. And under them, you can see what specific type of courses, videos we will get. So here you can see that it is giving me the information about ongoing technology revolutions, about working with the self-paced courses, where I will get the course related to the 920, 300, 310, 330. So these ones are going to be on a free note. You can see that much of videos are available. And you can also see some sample videos in here before opting the course. And the first 15 days will totally going to be free. And you will get the full access for those ones, only not for the videos, but also for the lab environment where you guys can actually go there and perform the practical task. Okay, so that thing you need to actually find out from the webinar website. Let me just see that. So here you can see these are our upcoming webinars, but maybe right away we do not have the finance and operation, but we are surely planning for it. So I would request do visit our website after some time, and we will get the webinars for the finance and operation also. And surely it's going to be for the technical as well as with the video specifically for functional itself. Now let me share you one more informations to you. Like whenever we are talking about that how the environment will going to be look like when we will go through with the examination. So let me share you that information here. I'm going with the PL200 Microsoft. So here you can see Microsoft is giving us the sandbox also, where we can actually get the experience that how the sandbox will going to be available, where we are going to complete our papers. So I can open this specific sandbox here. And here you can see just like this, you guys will going to have your own sandbox available, the real-time experiences, where this is going to be your first page, where it's going to show you about the terms and conditions of your examinations. You need to select your terms and conditions as yes, and then you need to go for the next button. So on the right hand top side, you will always find out time, a stopwatch, which will give you an alert that how much time is still remaining for completing this. Then in the second page, it's going to show you that this courses belongs to that topic and you need to approximately get 700 numbers for passing that examinations and so on. Here, it's going to ask, confirm you that for which specific program you are going to complete that exam schedule and how many questions are going to be there, what is going to be your maximum time for completing it, what is the minimum score to pass out. Let me click on the next button. Then it's going to give you some basic information about the course as well as the exam which you are going through with. And then it's going to start asking yourself a questions here. So let's have a look about them. So here, ready to take the exam? I would say yes, I'm ready to take the exam. So I'm going to click on the next button. And here, It's welcoming us to the sandbox. Let me click on the next button. You can see in the time remaining, it's giving me the total time which I'm getting for this specific sandbox area. So because it's a demo sandbox, so it's giving me the 8 hours of time, but in the real time environment, you will go and see about the timings of different sets. Like for each and every examinations, there is going to be a different timings for them. And accordingly, you will see the things. And that's how the question is going to be written. And it's going to show you that in this area, you need to complete 10 questions. Out of 10 questions, currently you are in the first question. You need to answer it, whatever it's going to be applicable. Then you need to click on the next button to go through with the next question. And that is how your sandbox, your real-time examination experience will going to be go through. So that is something we are having from my side relatively for this exam prep session. Now, if you guys have any kind of queries for that, you can actually go and ask your queries, or else we can close this session now here. And thank you very much for joining this session to all of you. And hopefully we'll meet again into another kind of a webinars we are having.